comes a point, often in midlife, when everything you've worked so hard to build begins to unravel. Perhaps your children leave home. You may get divorced or be moving towards it, or a long-term relationship ends. Your career path may not be working anymore. You may have health issues, or you may just begin to feel that something isn't right, something's off. There's a silent longing somewhere in the background of your life that is pulling you in a different direction, but you don't know where you're being pulled. All you know is the life you've been living has outgrown its form. I've talked about how the dark night of the soul is the sacred space between the life you've been living and the life that hasn't yet come into form. Although I call it a sacred space, it isn't an easy one because we as human beings get so wrapped up in our identities. We identify with being a parent, a husband, or a wife, a corporate executive, a business owner, or some other title. When those titles begin to fall away, we can no longer identify with them as who we are. There's a place of limbo where we don't know who we are. We can't go back to who we once were, but we can't jump ahead to where we're going because the path is simply unclear. This is where many of us find ourselves in the process of midlife reinvention. Midlife reinvention may or may not come with a painful dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul is a painful peeling away of the past. It's the shedding of old skins in a way that feels extremely uncomfortable. I've seen many people enter the dark night of the soul after a relationship with a narcissist who triggers their core wounds, or after a death of a loved one, or a financial collapse that sends one into a process of questioning everything. Midlife reinvention can also come with burnout. When you've given everything you have within you to a job, a spouse, or a family, and you simply don't have anything left to give. This often happens when your current lifestyle demands so much from you and you're left with no time for yourself. Your cup is empty. Your emotional and energetic bank accounts are overdrawn, and there's nothing left to give. When you're in a place of burnout, you will often experience a breakdown. If you continue to try and push through and keep going when all your energy reserves are depleted, you'll likely break down. This means you'll reach a point where you simply can't go another day doing the same things that you've always done. You may try and make some small adjustments and keep going, such as taking a well-needed vacation or a few mental health days. You may carve out a bit of time for yourself, but inevitably you're pulled back to the life you've always known. You have to return to work and all its demands after that vacation where you had a taste of freedom, or all your attempts to repair that relationship bring you to the same place of emotional exhaustion. When you reach a point of breakdown, you simply can't go back. It's over. You've reached your limit. I've gone through this kind of experience several times in my life where I had to leave a career that was paying the bills and providing financial security, but I simply no longer had the energy to keep going. I've gone through this recently as my business started to fail after decades of dedication to a cause. I was left questioning why I gave so much for so little. Why did I keep going year after year, even though I wasn't getting the return on my investment? I was left feeling burned out and unappreciated. And this did inevitably lead me to a dark night of the soul. As I talked about in a previous podcast, this was my call to midlife reinvention. I had to let go of everything and ask a very important question. Why am I here? If money was no object, how would I serve? What am I most passionate about? I realized that I was passionate about sharing the journey that I was on because I knew I wasn't alone on this journey. Just as I shared my journey through narcissistic abuse decades ago, I was now sharing a different kind of journey. It was the powerful journey of becoming. It was the journey of reinvention. It was the journey of recreation, of transformation from one path to another. It isn't that our previous path was bad or wrong. We simply outgrow it. Just like the caterpillar, we outgrow our skins. And nature gives us a perfect metaphor in the molting process. Caterpillars grow very quickly, but their outer skin or exoskeleton doesn't stretch like our skin does. So as they grow, they reach a point where the old skin can no longer contain them. To keep growing, they must shed their outer layer. This process is called molting, and it happens multiple times during their caterpillar stage, usually 4 to 5 times. And here's what happens. There's a period of stillness before molting. The caterpillar becomes quiet, stops eating, and anchors itself in place. This can look like a simple pause or retreat. The old skin splits. The caterpillar literally breaks free from the old skin, a vulnerable process that requires effort and energy, and a fresh, soft skin emerges. The new skin underneath is already formed, but it's soft and unprotected at first. The caterpillar must wait for it to harden before resuming activity. Then it begins again. Each molt brings it closer to transformation to become a butterfly. We go through a similar process before our butterfly finale. We go through a series of letting go of the old skins that can no longer contain us. Each time we molt, so to speak, we step more fully into our true, authentic self. Life typically happens in stages. For women, we call it the maiden, the mother, and the crone stages. But I once interviewed a woman who brought to my attention that there was a missing stage. And this is the stage of the queen that comes after motherhood and before cronehood. The queen is the stage where we stop living for others and begin living in devotion to our soul. So we have the maiden, who is the child and the young woman. We have the mother, who is in the life stage of being a parent, or for those women who have never had children, they often are nurturing a career. After the kids are raised and leave the nest, we go into our queen stage, which is where we ask the question, who am I now that I'm not identified as a mother? And the crone part of our life is when we truly become an elder, which could be around 75 or 80 years of age. These are natural stages of life, but often the transition from one stage to another can be challenging. And the queen stage of life is likely one of the most challenging stages for a woman because there's no clear pathway. As a mother, we may feel uncertain and not know if we're being a good mother or not, but our path is still pretty clear. We have these little people that we are responsible for guiding and nurturing along their path. But as a queen, we have the difficult task of becoming who we were always meant to be, beyond all the roles, beyond the identity. Stepping into our queenhood is to walk the soul path. It is to learn how to listen, how to follow intuition, how to answer the call, even when there is no clear pathway. Stepping into our queen often means trying on many skins, shedding the ones that no longer fit until we find the one that feels like home. In our queen stage, we're often tasked with walking alone. We may find community in the sisterhood, bonding more deeply with other women, or we might find ourselves on a solo journey that involves a lot of loneliness and isolation. Wherever we find ourselves, we need to be gentle with ourselves and not judge as right or wrong. We're simply in the process of becoming. We're in the process of reinvention, and often this is something that must be done alone without influence. We often need to withdraw from others in order to truly be still and listen to the voice within. It may ask us to leave a marriage or leave the community we've been living in for so long, or do something that feels risky, like moving into an RV or living abroad. Often it's not the action we take, but what that action brings to us that is important. For example, I leave my home every year and move into my RV and hit the road. I have a series of adventures, and it's a long journey every year, but it takes me deeper into myself. I have a lot of challenges. I'm often very much alone and independent and have to make decisions on the spot and solve my own problems. I am really required to tap into my inner guidance in a deeper way. And this is probably the greatest gift of my travels, listening on a deeper level. Often I wish there was someone there beside me, helping me, supporting me, and making the journey easier. But this is not what life has planned for me at the time. And so I am forced to rely on myself in a way that I never had before. It often feels like the king has died and I'm left ruling the kingdom alone. Maybe one day there will be a true king for my inner queen, but not at this time. This is a time for fierce independence and finding a strength within that I never knew I had. Midlife reinvention is truly a journey. It's not an overnight process. It is a one step at a time journey. We don't know where the path is leading us. We have to develop blind trust in something greater than our small selves. And we have to watch the voice of the ego-driven black wolf who pulls us into self-pity, self-doubt, and insecurity. This time of stepping into our sovereign king or queen is a time to walk with the white wolf, listening to intuition, following the unknown path, the road less traveled. We need to develop a strong trust in that higher power, knowing we're being guided to where we truly belong, not as a physical destination, but an internal one. Although the breakdown phase of the journey may feel like a failure in the beginning, it is important to remember that we have to break down before we can break through. There's truly beauty in the breakdown. It is the shedding of the old skins. It's a peeling away of what no longer works. It's not a failure, but a call to something greater. I remember how I felt like I had failed when everything started to fall apart for me. My income was dwindling. I couldn't hold on to a relationship. I didn't have any friends left who I could truly relate to at this phase of my journey. I felt like my life no longer mattered. It no longer had meaning or purpose. I was growing older and it wasn't looking really good for me. It felt I had lost everything. I feared what would become of me. It wasn't until I surrendered to the unraveling and learned to see it as part of the phase that I was in that I regained strength and a sense of passion for the path unfolding before me. The old life wasn't working anymore. The old patterns couldn't be upheld any longer. It was time for a shift in the way that I did life. And this process of unraveling preceded the shift. With learning to trust, I started to realize that I was going to be okay. Even though I didn't know what the road ahead looked like, I trusted it would be okay. I was going to be okay. And as we get older, we also start to confront our own death. We get closer to realizing that we aren't going to be here forever. We likely have less time ahead of us than we have behind us. And this is where it becomes more important that we live a life of meaning and purpose. We're no longer content with plugging into a system and doing what's expected of us. We're no longer content pursuing the same things that we always pursued. Our life has a way of pulling us from the world out there and bringing us into the silent spaces within. In the end, we know that our soul is all we really have. It's the only thing that goes with us. And wouldn't it make sense that we find peace in our soul now as we move towards our crone years, where we shed our wisdom upon those who seek it out, and we prepare ourselves for our transition from this world to the next? Who we become when we undergo a midlife reinvention isn't meant to be something that may be admired or praised by the outside world. Sure, authenticity is often admired and respected, but it's also often feared. Because with true authenticity, we're no longer doing what we believe we should, and now we're doing what we feel that we must. The greatest guide upon the path of midlife reinvention is always within us. We may seek guidance to help us to learn to trust that inner voice, but in the end, there is a true spiritual relationship unfolding, one where we listen, we follow, and we trust. Life becomes more simple, perhaps more minimalistic. Perhaps we're much happier with less. And perhaps we no longer seek to conform to the norm, but to truly be free. True freedom and soul authenticity is the path of those on the midlife reinvention journey. You are no longer seeking to be what you think you should, but rather to be who you really are. If you'd like to plug into a system that would help you to walk the soul path, I invite you to sign up for my free 7-day Finding Your Soul Path e-course that will guide you inward and give you some simple exercises that you can do daily to begin living true to yourself right now. I'll put a link in the show notes below. Meanwhile, I want to thank you so much for taking this journey with me today, and thank you for listening. I will see you in the next podcast. Namaste.